The 1908 Young Turk Revolution was a very important event in Ottoman history that laid the path for the future of the Ottoman Empire. There were many different minority groups living in the Ottoman Empire at the time, such as Armenians, Arabs, Albanians, Greeks, Serbs, and many others. These groups caused some division within the empire, but were not directly responsible for the collapse of the empire. The Young Turks is a broad term for all of the political groups that sought reform within the Ottoman Empire, mostly during the early 20th century. The Young Turks advocated for the abolishment of the Ottoman Sultanate and an addition of many new reforms. The Young Turks wanted to prevent the collapse of the empire and bring it back to glory. First, I will give some background. In 1839, a series of reforms known as the Tanzimat was implemented. These reforms aimed at slowing the decline of the empire. Some of these reforms granted more religious freedoms, reorganized the army, more ethnic equality, increased industry, and free education. Another goal of the Tanzimat was to draw power away from the Sultan into a parliament body. The empire sought to fit better in Western society. In 1876, the Ottoman Constitution was drafted and implemented. Unfortunately for the pro-reformers, on the 14th of February, 1878, Ottoman Sultan Abdülhamid II dismantled the parliament after the Russo-Turco War of 1877 and 1878, meaning no further democratic elections would be held. The empire was now an absolute monarchy. In 1889, a conspiracy spread around colleges in the Ottoman capital, Constantinople. Quickly, the Ottoman authorities derailed the conspiracy, and the participants fled to foreign cities. Some conspirators came together to form the Committee of Union and Progress, or the CUP for short. All of those against the Ottoman government were known as the Young Turks. 13 years later, in 1902, Ottoman oppositionists came together in Paris in what was known as the First Congress of Ottoman Opposition. At the gathering, there was a split within the CUP. One such Young Turk, named Mehmed Sabahaddin, favored a decentralized government and support from European powers to achieve reform within the Ottoman Empire. Sabahaddin also pushed for equality regardless of a subject's ethnicity or religion. He was particularly popular among the Armenians living in the Ottoman territory, as they believed that if he was to come to power, Armenians would gain more autonomy. The majority of the party members, however, advocated for centralization and industrialization, arguing that giving more power to minority groups would only cause the empire to fall apart. This split led to Sabahaddin's party leaving the CUP and forming the Liberal Freedom and Accord Party. Although the factions had many different opinions, they all agreed on removing the Sultan, reinstating the 1876 Constitution, and reorganizing the parliament. 4 years later, in 1906, members of the 3rd Army Corps based in Thessaloniki secretly came together to form the Ottoman Liberal Society, who were in opposition to the Sultan's government. A year later, in 1907, a second Ottoman opposition meeting was held in Paris. The Ottoman Liberal Society, basically the 3rd Army Corps, agreed to merge with the CUP. This gave the CUP, the main Young Turk revolutionaries, control of a large portion of the army, meaning Sultan Abdülhamid was in danger. The second Ottoman opposition meeting was held to unite all of the opposition parties, including the leading CUP, to better organize their revolution against the Sultan. This unity was not initially achieved, however, because different parties were divided about how the empire would be run after the Sultan was overthrown. In the end, Sabahaddin's League and the CUP, the two main parties, reluctantly agreed to work together. A revolution was planned, with the goal of abolishing the Sultanate and to replace it with a parliament. The Sultan would still remain, but only as a figurehead. On May 13, 1908, the Cup, with enough power, was able to declare that the Sultan's quote-unquote dynasty would be in danger if he did not revive the constitution. Sultan Abdul Hamid II became concerned that the army was against him, so he decided to starve the army of funds. He also hired hundreds of secret agents to stop the impending revolt, but support for reform and the Young Turks was still spreading. On July 3, 1908, Major Ahmed Niazi, aligned with the Cup, feared he would be discovered by a government investigation. Stationed in Thessaloniki, which is now present-day Greece, he took 200 of his men and demanded for the Sultan to bring back the constitution. This began the Young Turk Revolution of 1908. Other revolutionary officers in the Ottoman-controlled Balkans, who were also against the Sultan, were quickly informed of the uprising and formed their own battalions to fight the Sultan's government. The alarmed Sultan failed to crush the uprising. Rebellion spread rapidly across the empire. On July 23, 1908, the overwhelmed Sultan was forced to concede to the revolutionaries' demands. Abdul Hamid II reinstated the 1876 Ottoman Constitution and revised it to make sure the parliament had the real power. Finally, parliament was reorganized. In 1908, the first Ottoman general election was held. The Cup won 60 of the 288 seats in the Chamber of Deputies and won the majority. However, the struggle for power between the Young Turks and the Sultan wasn't over, as less than a year later, on March 31, 1909, a counter-coup occurred. This incident, known as the March 31st incident, occurred when monarchists and soldiers revolted in an attempt to bring back the Sultan's power. Many soldiers taking part in this uprising revolted because they wanted better conditions. The counter-coup was also encouraged by a religious organization known as the Mohammedan Union, who wanted to restore power to the Sultan. The weakness of the new Ottoman government allowed the uprising to spread. Eventually, the Third Ottoman Army Corps, led by Mahmud Sevkit, was able to stop the rebellion. Although the Young Turk Revolution was now over, the Cup, the party in charge of the Ottoman Empire, still had a lot on their hands. There was still political instability within the empire, and many wars were on the horizon. In 1911, Italy invaded Ottoman-controlled Libya, and in a separate incident, thousands of Albanians revolted, causing a plummet in the Cup's popularity. In 1912, the second Ottoman general election was held, with the Cup winning in a landslide, taking 269 of the 275 seats. The opposition, the Freedom and Accord Party, won the other 6 seats. This election, known as the election of clubs, was actually rigged in favor of the Cup. This election caused massive opposition throughout the country. Many anti-Cup army officers revolted. In July of 1912, the Cup, under lots of pressure, was forced to resign, and the Freedom and Accord Party took power. Many liberals, especially members of the Freedom and Accord Party, attempted to keep Cup members away from the army and the government. Unfortunately for the Freedom and Accord Party, in January of 1913, another counter-coup occurred, led by Enver Pasha. Enver Pasha was a commander from the Italo-Turco War and the Balkan Wars. He was generally liked by the public because he had helped command Ottoman soldiers and helped take back land from Bulgaria in the Second Balkan War. This counter-coup began after members of the Cup were concerned that the liberal government would concede to a demand by the great powers, particularly Russia, in which the city of Adrianople would be given to the Bulgarians. The Ottomans had lost Adrianople to the Bulgarians during the First Balkan War, but had recaptured it during the Second Balkan War. The loss of Adrianople would situate Bulgaria closer to Constantinople, the Ottoman capital. The coup led to the Cup taking power once more. The government was now run by a group of three loyal to the Cup: Enver Pasha, the Minister of War, Talat Pasha, the Prime Minister, and Jamal Pasha, the Navy Minister. During their 10 years in power, from 1908 to 1918, the Cup created a centralized government, pushed for industrialization, and established better education for women. Enver Pasha would eventually drag the crippled Ottoman Empire into the First World War. This move would guarantee the total collapse of the empire in 1918.